Right, welcome back. So we're starting off with the perspective of the House of Representatives, the Committee on Basic Education and Services. They have not too comfortable with that decision by the Minister of Education on WAEC, the students. So we're going to hear them out this morning. We've got Honorable Julius Iyamber, who is the chairman of that committee. He joins us live this morning. Good morning, Honorable. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning.
So we heard.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, we heard some part of the perspectives out there, how the members feel. So tell us, if you could shed more light on why the House wants the executive to reverse that decision.
Thank you. I think the first thing to note is that we are not talking about school reopening. We are talking about writing the West African Secondary School Certificate Examination. Those who are, and these the numbers, they are less than 1/4 or 1/5 of the total numbers of students registered in senior secondary school. In addition to that, we believe that Nigeria is not the only country involved in this, and we say we are the big brother of Africa, that our foreign policy is centered on Africa, and we try to play a supportive role. And I think we have no evidence so far that there was consultation with the other countries in West Africa. We have no evidence that the ministers or commissioners for education in West Africa met. We have no evidence that even stakeholders in Nigeria were duly consulted before that decision was taken. We also thought that the impact on the parents, on the schools, on the instructions, on WAEC itself, that has already deployed its resources across the country in preparation to write the exam, when the signals came from the ministry, these were not put into consideration. So we feel embarrassed that we're giving the impression to the world that since the COVID-19 outbreak, we've been doing nothing to prepare, to respond, and adjust to the new normal, as they say. What is required to write this exam is not that complicated. We are not putting, these are not babies, they are not kids, they are not kindergarten or primary school children. And we wrote to the ministry about 4 weeks ago that if you are planning to reopen schools, these are certain protocols you must take. Basically, the same protocols that the NCDC had put out. We also had an interactive meeting with the Minister of State, who assured us that everything was on course and they would write the exams in a very safe environment. He also announced this at the COVID-19 briefings. And suddenly we got the news from the minister, and we felt it was not well thought out. The decision should be reversed. It is possible to write the exam. The stakeholders are ready. And it's unfortunate that we are now, as a federal government, separating the unity schools, just 104 of them.
Honorable, just before you get to that point, a number of issues that you raised, if you could just pick up on them so you could shed a little more light. Now, you did say that you don't think it's well thought out, no consultations were made. So assuming all of those were made, if they had met with stakeholders, if he has spoken with them before announcing that decision, would that have been okay?
It would have made a big difference, because the stakeholders would have put on the table the preparations that they have made to ensure safety. Initially, the idea was for them to come in and be in for revision classes. And we have suggested that they should forget about that. No revision classes. They come from home and write the exam and go back. Everyone has to make some kind of sacrifice to get the country going. We understand and sympathize fully with the position of the minister. But in terms of policy and programs and moving this country forward and not complicating the lives of our young children, it is when you fail WAEC, that with the WASC exam, that you know that life is not stable and it's not a bed of roses. But when you pass it and go ahead to the university or polytechnic, it looks rosy. So We need to talk to the private school owners. They're a chunk of these stakeholders. We need to sit WAEC down and understand their protocols and what arrangements they've made. We need to know why other West African countries are intent on continuing and are ready, like yesterday, to write the WAEC exams. Nigeria should not appear to be the only one in the world that is not ready to recognize and adjust to the new reality that we all face.
All right, I'd like you to listen to the position of the minister as at the time he made that comment, because there were those who had questions too, but let's even listen to it and respond specifically to some of the issues that were raised after this. Take a listen.
Schools under the supervision of the Federal Ministry of Education will not reopen on August 4th or any time soon. Our schools will only open when we believe it is safe for our children, and that is when the situation is right, not when incidence of the infection is going up in the nation. Yesterday, we called a meeting of stakeholders who will tell us their situation and what needs to be done in order for it to be safe. While the meeting was going on, WAEC announced that they are starting on the... So let's see who they are going to start with. And I would also like to, at this position, ask those states that have already announced, I appeal to them. I think it is not safe. I feel responsible for all children, not just the children who are in federal government controlled schools. Please, let's save our children from this. You can just take one scenario. One infected child going into a class. Because, this social distancing is just some beautiful theory. When the cameras are there, everybody will be obeying it. When there is no camera, everybody will just be normal, especially children. One child is enough to infect everyone in the class. When they close class, they go to the dormitory. Everybody in the dormitory by tomorrow will probably be. So this is not the right time to open schools. I appeal to the states that have already announced to reconsider it. If we are given the choice, me as Minister of Education, if I'm given the choice, I don't mind Nigeria losing a complete school year than exposing our children to danger. I think their health is more important than the examination they are going to write. And WAEC is a parasite of the Ministry of Education. They cannot determine for the government what it does. I think they should probably change their dates or will do without them.
So, a number of issues that he raised there, predicating his decision on the fact that safety, I don't know how many people can argue against that the figures were going up, and as such, he doesn't think it is safe. And then he spoke about stakeholders. You had said that there was no record of their meeting. So right there, he was talking about they had called a meeting of stakeholders. And while that was going on, WAEC then went ahead and announced it. So in addition to your response to that stakeholder bit, shouldn't the House or the National Assembly be seen to be on the part supporting government in the sense that the impression he's given there is that WAEC is trying to, strong arm us, force us to take a decision, because he says they are a parastatal. You can't determine what we do. So are we getting it right in that regard?
Well, I think certain things have been mixed up here. If you listen to him carefully, he's talking about children in boarding. We are not talking about boarding. He's talking about states that have announced reopening. We are not talking about the reopening of schools at all. We are talking about just the few students in final years, in exit classes that are taking WAEC and leaving the secondary school world completely. Those are the ones we are talking about. And they are not up to 15% of the total number of students. Let me also state that prior to that, we assume there was a synergy in the ministry. It was the ministry that set the date. They announced it that the WAEC exams would take place, not school reopening. The House is not complaining about school reopening. We are talking about those who have already prepared and are ready to write the examination. So when you talk of safety of our children, we agree with the minister. He's right. But when we talk about those who are adults, really, 17, 18, 19, even 20, and we said, look, don't cramp them in the school hall. use all the classrooms, fumigate the buildings, give them face masks, let them have sanitizers, check their temperature before they go in, prepare for them to wash their hands. I'm surprised that there are some states that have not made these arrangements, because all over the world, these are the arrangements that are already being made in schools, you know. But we're not talking about school reopening. We agree fully with the minister, and I appreciate his sentiments. But when it comes to the issue of WAEC, if they were meeting with stakeholders, was WAEC sitting there or not? You know, from his statements, it appears WAEC was not even there. But WAEC is the most important stakeholder in this issue. And they have deployed the resources based on the position of the ministry that the exams would take place.
Well, Honorable, one of the issues that you raised...
There's no data to show.
Okay, just one moment. We'll give you some data shortly, but one of the issues that you also raised is that we're not talking about boarding school, but you would also know that most, if not all, of the Unity schools, they have boarding facilities. And some of them come from far to come to school and stay there. So if you are saying that we are not talking about boarding facilities, how do those boarding school students write the WAEC if the minister doesn't take this step?
Well, the Unity schools are 104. And you know that is an infinitesimal number of secondary schools in Nigeria. And if they have to come from home to write this, not all of them, yes, some come from far and near, but I'm sure arrangements can be made either by parents or by the schools to keep them. The exam doesn't last for 1 month. I mean, this is not as safe because they are boarding schools, we will no longer write exams. Are we going to say we're going to close schools forever until COVID-19 disappears before we now bring students back to boarding schools to write exams? No boarding schools, we're not talking of them. But those in the final year in those schools are a very small number, and arrangements can be made for them to write the exams.
Well, the logistics of that, Honorable.
Anyway,
okay. Well, just one moment. The logistics of that, you know, is really, you know, few and far between. A number of people are going to have a Herculean time even understanding how it will be possible for boarding school students, 17, 18, 19, as you said, very active minds, to be away from home without being under any authority and sit to write exams. That's one. Then secondly, you will also remember that the minister said that most of the time, this social distancing thing that we're talking about is just for the cameras. And you will also agree that to a large extent, many people do not really observe these things. And he said just one student in one day can, in the class, no matter how few and far between they are in a class, given that now the NCDC and the World Health Organization have said that we cannot rule out the possibility of coronavirus disease being airborne now. How do we champion that? How do we manage that to ensure that, you know, these children don't get exposed when the disease is airborne?
Well, I think there is no final word on whether it is airborne or not. It is droplets, and they've measured the distances that can travel. But that is not the issue. I think for these children, it depends on how the exams are managed. We have already made the case that WAEC should increase the number of invigilators. They should quadruple the number of invigilators. The students come in. They don't rush into the class. You check their temperature. They wash their hands. They give them their face masks and sanitizers and direct them to the desk they will sit on, which is at least 2-3 meters away from the next person. What is so difficult in that? That we're so scared of? It's not rocket science. So for me, I think that arrangements can be made. WAEC can even make arrangements for these students who are far away to write it in schools in their communities. After all, it's exam numbers they are using, and WAEC has digitized their procedures significantly. So for me, I do not think that is the issue. If the current date is not convenient, it is very possible to extend the timetable, to give more time to write this exam, so that the logistics will be resolved. And the solution is to sit down with WAEC and reach some accommodation and common ground and present it to Nigerians and West Africans. We should remember that we're not the only country writing these exams. How did the others make the arrangements? How did they at least accommodate the realities they're living in to ensure that their students are safe and write the exams in a safe environment?
Well, Honorable, the thing is, I know you know that the way countries are handling their COVID-19 cases is peculiar to each country. So they take their decisions based on their peculiarity. Some are reimposing the lockdown, but we haven't. So, but it's the same COVID-19 we're all grappling to tackle. But the thing is, right after that announcement was made by the PTF that those in graduating classes can go back and as such they can write exams such as WIAC, we ran the poll asking parents and students if they thought it was safe for that to happen. And the poll, over 60% of them at that time had said it was not safe for that to happen in that particular poll, which you can see on the screen if you can. And just not long after this, the minister then came up with that decision. So if you're talking about gauging opinion of people, has the House done that amongst parents? Because if you say it's not that easy, those are the views of some of those parents and students who thought they don't think it's safe to do that.
Well, we're in touch with our constituents. Remember that the House of Representatives is the people's house. We represent every constituency in this country. And from what we get is that, yes, they're not prepared for schools to reopen now, but they are anxious to have their final year students write their WIAC exams. And they believe that it is possible to have sufficient social distancing by using all the classrooms that are now vacant because schools are not open. This is not such a difficult thing. We are putting fear before action. And we're, in fact, trying to make it look like we're going to cramp all these children in one room and tell them to write these exams. I think we should be proactive. We should be creative and innovative and show that we're not going to give in. If this country can say, okay, churches can reopen, mosques can reopen, markets can work, you can have limited malls, shopping malls are working. Why are we afraid to have 20 students or 50 students sit in about 8 classrooms, write WIAC exams? I mean, why we are complicating and complexifying a very simple, straightforward matter. But the exam body itself, I believe, from our interaction, they said, look, we have our papers ready. We're ready to make all the necessary adjustments you need. We're ready to shift the time to give sufficient room for Nigeria to write its own exam, even if different from the others. We can delay that of Nigeria. We should accommodate this. We know this is a very difficult environment, but then the safety protocols are there. And if we take it seriously, there is no reason why we cannot accommodate this and have these children write their examinations.
So is it that the ministry is saying that they will not extend and allow WIAC to make that specific provision for Nigerians if they feel that it's not safe? Because after all, are we supposed to allow WIAC kick us around? They have to comply with what the member states want.
And we're a democracy. There are 5 members, 4 say yes, 1 say no. So if you are going along those lines, you will not have the kind of result you're thinking about. But what I think is that should be the next level of the conversation with WIAC. To say, all right, we need more time in Nigeria. Well, look at your timetable. How do you accommodate us so that we send out people? What I want to see is not commissioners coming out to say, oh, we will not write the exams. That's embarrassing, even for their own governments. What I expect them to see is to say, look, you, federal ministry, set the policy, send out inspectors as usual. We as state governments, as local governments, will make sure that schools are fumigated, the chairs are properly distanced, and we have... So how many minutes does it take to produce face masks? If you go to Aba, they make you 1 million in 2 days. Sanitizers are now being produced everywhere in this country, and the price has come down significantly. How much do you have to check the temperature gun? Now, it's cheap. So for me, I still do not see what is so complicated in this. Every secondary school has more than 20 classrooms. There is nobody in these classrooms. The number of persons writing the WIAC, you occupy maybe 2 or 3. Now you spread them in 20 classrooms to write the exams. How is it not complying with COVID protocols, the most stringent you can think of? So I think the next line of conversation, really, and the House is inviting the minister and WIAC for an interactive session on Thursday to say, where do we go from here? What are the options? Are we going to say until the World Health Organization says we have a vaccine and it is available to everybody before we can say let the exit class go and write their exams. Be rest assured, we know that schools should not reopen because the crowd will be very dangerous. But the exiting class can write their exams.
Okay, because
I don't work in this country, and I know how many people write these things.
okay, because the thing is, I mean, when you say it's a democracy and those countries and Nigeria, but if you put together all those countries and compare to Nigeria's population, then we're not just a member, as it were. But the thing, Honorable, when you say...
You will be rationalizing the behavior of America in the world.
Well, it's a democracy. If you could pull your weight around, why not? I mean, that's what it's for the benefit of your people. But the thing is, now that you say, because I was going to ask if the committee had reached out to the ministry or minister, but now that you say they're coming up on Thursday, shouldn't you have done that before coming up with your position that no, you don't agree with that position? Shouldn't you have heard them out first before now?
Before. We did, I told you we had sent a letter when we had the initial discussions about school reopening, that it may not be safe, but we believe before you do that, take all stakeholders into consideration and make sure that all the COVID protocols for safety are taken into consideration. We did that. And we also invited the minister himself. He was represented by the Minister of State, who sat with the committee in the House and gave us the assurances. In fact, he was so eloquent, he was so clear in his discussions that we commended him and assured him of our cooperation and collaboration to ensure that things work out very well. So we sat down and were waiting that this would happen. We in turn were not consulted that to say we have changed our position. We heard it in the news just like you did, I'm sure. And in our first immediate reaction to that is that this is not right. We do not agree with the evidence we have and with what we know and with what we are getting from our constituents and communities. It is possible. But as a follow-up, we issued a statement on our own position, but also wrote to the ministry to say, let's have an interactive session. Maybe there's some information you have that we do not have. Let's put it on the table, and then we can all be on the same page. We work in harmony with the ministry. The minister is a very good person. He's a personal friend. The Minister of State was a member of the House of Representatives. The dialogue process between the ministry and the committee is very open, clear, and cordial.
Because I was just, I thought that meeting held before his announcement. So I thought, had there been another of such meeting after his announcements, before your position, and then asking him to come up on Thursday? No,
there was no other meeting between us since after the initial meeting with the Minister of State. But we've put in a letter, we've given enough time now to put it on Thursday so that we can have this interactive conversation. And if the conclusion is that it is not safe to do it and we see reason, why not? We don't have any special sake that is secret on this matter. We just believe that as representatives of the people, and looking at the implications for us as a country, for our foreign policy, for the image of Nigeria, for the future of these kids, and for the burden it will place on WAEC itself, and the cost of postponement and doing it together next year, we should take a second look at it and reach some understanding.
Some listening to you right now will think, which one is the House of Representatives Committee on Basic Education and Services prioritizing, the safety of our children or the image of the country? But I'm sure you are aware that some school children in Ghana and teachers, about more than 50 of them actually, were said to have tested positive to COVID-19 after they opened schools. So that also raises the question, if it so happens that we open schools and some of these things occur and students, we have increased figures of COVID-19 in schools just because they reopened. What happens? Do you think we have enough already? Our health system is pressured. Do you think we have enough to contend with that right now?
I agree with you. And I said this before, and I would like to repeat it for clarity. The House Committee on Basic Education is not clamoring for the reopening of schools. Ghana reopened too early, and they had that spike. we are talking about the exit classes, only those in SS3 who are writing WAEC examination. And they are a very small percentage, not even up to 10% of the total number of students in JSS or SS1 and 2. It's only those in SS3 who are writing the final exit exams. Because if they don't write that exam, they are not qualified to even talk about JAMB or going to polytechnics or universities. They have to wait a whole year at home. And we're saying, how do we make it safe for them? Of course, the issue of the image of Nigeria, the safety of our children, and writing the exam, they are all intertwined. There is no difference as far as I'm concerned.
All right, Honorable. We'll look forward to that meeting on Thursday and hope that good reasons, get the better at the end of the day. We do thank you for your thoughts and hope that all this is sorted. We're back in a moment, everyone.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you too.